Tonight on Frontline, street gangs. One man fights back and starts a war.
I'm not gonna leave here. I'm gonna let them know somebody got to stand up. Now they gonna run me away from here?
No way.
Yeah, when I leave here in the box.
Mr. Hawkins' son blew away one of the gang members. They are going to not be satisfied until they get somebody from the Hawkins family.
Tonight, the story behind the shootout on Imperial Highway.
From the network of public television stations, a presentation of KCTS Seattle, WNET New York, WPBT Miami, WTVS Detroit, and WGBH Boston. This is Frontline with Judy Woodruff.
Good evening. Tonight on Frontline, the first of a special two-part report on street gangs, a problem facing every major city in this country. Our focus is Los Angeles, said to have the worst gang problem of all, with more than 400 street gangs. They have a membership of over 40,000. At the center of our story is a man who faced a gang, a man named James Hawkins, a 73-year-old grocer. About a year ago, Hawkins attracted national publicity and became a hero because he stood up against a gang that had declared war on his family. It sounded almost like the plot of a Western movie, a shopkeeper fighting to protect his family and business, a shootout, murder charges, death threats. But it's not a Western movie, and modern-day heroes like James Hawkins are more complex than their Wild West counterparts. So, too, are the gang members they fear. The program, produced by Robert Drew, is called Shootout on Imperial Highway.
Okay, how long ago did you see that man? Everybody was running southbound from your location now?
13-8-4. Call it the Southland. Call it the City of Angels. Half the urban area of Los Angeles County is staked out by street gangs. Los Angeles gangs are turning more and more to murder for profit, murder to control citizens and to silence witnesses. And these are trends that are turning up in cities from coast to coast. Witnesses and victims everywhere are afraid. But here, one man is refusing to scare. In the fall of 1983, James Hawkins, 72, is fighting off attacks by an armed gang. On page 1, his story reads like a heroic stand for law and order. In real life, his motives are more complex, and he is backed by 6 sons with guns. The story is anything but typical, but it offers all of us a look into a kind of threat that is striking closer and closer to home.
They had me every way they can, but I'm gonna stay here. When I leave here in the box, just like I told you. And everybody over there on the counter. Now they gonna run me away from here?
No way.
Yeah, when I leave here in the box.
This one brave man who dared to stand up and say to the police department, I'm not going to move anywhere. This is my home. This is where I deserve to be.
We're not going to tolerate it. And the community is outraged.
They attempted to ram a car here in the yard, so I was standing out here with a .351 Winchester, and they shot twice, hit the house with a shotgun, right? So I opened fire on the car, shot the tires out, and the car swayed out to the left, right?
I was saying for Sunday night when they initially assaulted the premise, but Monday and Tuesday night I was confined on the charge of murder.
Murder. A gang claims that James Hawkins Jr. killed one of its members. The trouble began when Hawkins Sr. interrupted a robbery by gang members. James Jr. came to his father's aid. In a struggle that ensued, James Jr. says that a gang member pulled a gun which went off, mortally wounding the boy. It happened in front of the video arcade next to the store. The Hawkins house and store have become the targets of shooting attacks launched across Imperial Boulevard from the Nickerson Gardens housing project, where the Bounty Hunters gang hangs out. From James Hawkins' home and garage, he and his sons have returned fire and repelled 3 mass attacks. The police have declared that it is impossible to protect Hawkins, but today that changes. Mayor Bradley is here to commit to Hawkins' defense the most sophisticated anti-gang system in the country.
This city and county will not tolerate that kind of activity and will not stand silently by and tell people to move out. People we're asking to move out are the hoodlums.
If we have to commit the entire Los Angeles Police Department to protect this brave man and his family here, we shall do it.
Mayor Bradley has directed, and an order to protect Hawkins goes to the police anti-gang division. Created 3 years ago along with a similar division of county sheriffs, it faces the biggest gang problem in the United States. Mapped out, the territory claimed by more than 400 gangs covers half of urban Los Angeles. The division is headed by Lieutenant Bob Rukoff.
In Los Angeles, because the gangs are so widespread, they're located in virtually every community in the city. The emphasis has shifted away from one gang fighting another to gangs versus some innocent citizen who just happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. There's been a lot more shooting and innocent people are being killed. Where the real difficulty lies is finding the citizen who will even tell us what he saw, much less go to court and be sitting there facing the suspect and saying what he saw.
Convicting gangs in court has proven so difficult that an anti-gang unit has been set up in the district attorney's office by James Baskew. 17 special prosecutors going after convictions through new uses of conspiracy laws.
It used to be gang on gang. Now anyone can be fair game for gang violence. In the Hawkins case, we're talking about violent crime. And the conspiracy law means that anyone who participated with a joint state of mind, who did an overt act, can be prosecuted for, the acts of one. Now, what we're able to do with it in court is yet to be answered.
I think Mr. Hawkins is a very bold individual. If we have to put a squad of guys down there every day, then that's what we'll do. Because we got the biggest gang in the city. We're not a big police department, but I got 6,800 policemen out there to back me up, and there's no other street gang in town that big.
For Lieutenant Rukoff, it is rare to run into a Hawkins. It's more commonplace to come upon a store owner who has been less successful in protecting himself.
You don't get photographers out for robberies, so undoubtedly there's been a murder in that store. That is correct. What is this? Well, they only shot the old man, they didn't shoot the old lady. The guy that was shot and killed had on a bulletproof vest and was wearing a gun and a holster on his hip. That's just your typical mom and pop market, and Pop is wearing a bulletproof vest and carrying a gun on his hip to protect his store. And that kind of, somebody taking those kinds of steps to protect his store is a pretty good indication of just how he perceives the danger to be. And apparently his perceptions were pretty damn accurate, because now he's dead.
Every store owner in Los Angeles knows what can happen and understands the risks James Hawkins runs by standing up to the gang. Between the house and store is a garage area used by Hawkins and his sons as a bunker to defend against attacks launched across Imperial Boulevard from Nickerson Gardens. Police crash units and sheriff's OSS units are trying to protect Hawkins and arrest the attackers.
1025 HQ in about 5 minutes. Is that a copy?
This is Treetops, a former gang member who is able to talk to both gang members and the Hawkins. He works for Youth Gang Services, part of Los Angeles County's effort to talk to and mediate among gangs. Treetops has gone into Nickerson Gardens and tried to cool down the gang members.
Mr. Hawkins' son blew away one of the gang members, helping someone. Okay, now, to the gang members, that's a no-no. You don't blow away nobody unless you have, for what? The bottom line is they are going to not be satisfied until they get somebody from the Hawkins family.
showed them how to go tonight too. They want to take some pills tonight.
Okay.
And we don't want them to go all the way out. See, just let them go.
They're kind of hot.
I don't
The
know.
gang activity.
Police normally-
just came over here and was telling us they gonna try to set us up.
Yeah,
That's what he was just out there telling us.
Yeah.
It's not wise to. We can't jeopardize ourselves and
Yeah.
keep tripping with them in a sense.
Yeah.
It just can't do it. What was he telling us?
Yeah.
They're gonna use girls to try to spot it. They're gonna use the little kids to try to spot it.
We gotta watch the kids.
We gotta
too, 'cause
watch.
some of
We
the
don't
kids
wanna-
have guns.
We are not to
Yeah.
have none of our little kids out there. That's what they are
That's
saying.
right.
They just want to dead Hawkins.
They want any
Yeah.
of us dead. Don't fool with the girls or the kids anymore. I mean, hey, if they coming to buy something, let them do it, but watch them like you would watch the grown-up. No difference. Watch the little kids with the firearms, because that's what they plan on trying to do it to you.
James Hawkins has always been a model for his sons to live up to. He set one example for his family just 6 months before the current trouble. He was held up by a woman and man. Hawkins gave them his money, but he had a gun nearby.
I keep my gun up over the cash register. So I grabbed my gun and ran to the door and hollered, halt, halt, come back, halt. And they turned around and went to shooting at me. Yeah, they turned around, both of them went to shooting at me. So I blazed her right in the face. I think I hit her right here. I knocked all that loose. Knocked her out. She fell out there. Money and everything, drinks and everything. I'd have got him if he'd stayed over here. But he it's really against the law. That's state highway. You can't shoot across the street.
You know, so I can understand why mom and dad have constantly stayed here. We were raised here. I mean, these are the roots. The roots is right here. So if he's going to toughen it out, that's what we're all about. We have to do the same.
Well, see, it's 72 grandchildren. This is just a few of them here.
Not only do they rob old women, young women, little kids, anybody that looks like they have something to be taken, you know, they'll get you, right? So I say, hey, that could be my wife, my sister, my mother, right? I mean, they don't have any discretion on who they're robbing, you know. So how can you say that, well, I just better, you know, look the other way. I better not do anything, because that could be you one day, right?
Wait till we relax and come over here and just
We got to stay on our guard.
assassinate us.
Yeah, we got to stay on our guard.
I never.
But I'm not going to leave here. I'm going to let them know somebody got to stand up.
So you have to stand somewhere or you fall apart, right? And I think that's the situation that happened with my brother. He just got tired of it, and he decided to take a stand at that moment.
James Jr. saw his father at the corner of Slater Street trying to stop 2 alleged members of the Bounty Hunters gang who were attempting to rob a woman and 3 children on Imperial Boulevard. He ran to his father's aid. The woman and children were able to leave. Then one of the suspects, Tony, entered the video arcade. James Jr. tried to eject Tony. A gun went off. Tony, wounded, ran back across Imperial Boulevard and died in the project.
If I had a pistol myself on me, I'm quite sure I could have outdrawn him, and in the barrel of my gun, he probably would have stopped drawing. He would have been alive today. But I didn't have no pistol on me. I was unarmed, so I went to him instead. And the struggle ensued, and boom, it went off, and he later died from his own wound, inflicted by himself, in a sense.
It was for lack of evidence to prosecute that the district attorney's office released James Jr., and that further enraged gang members.
You do not kill a blood and expect to have no retaliation. They are going to come back, bottom line. They can stand on top of the roof, man. They can drive by. You know, the Hawkins are always leaving. You know, the bottom line is they are not going to be satisfied until one of the Hawkins is pushing up daisies, because a bounty hunter is pushing daisies because of one of them. You know, it's just a matter of time before they catch one of them slipping. And when they catch one of the Hawkins slipping by themselves, they're going to burn it.
The first night when they came to get the revenge, it was Sunday night, it was about 25, 30 of them. And so when I seen them coming across the street with gas bombs, I say, hey, these guys are gonna burn us up, you know what I mean? So I opened fire on their head. I could have probably killed maybe about 8 or 9 of them, you know, but I didn't have the malice in my heart that they probably had in theirs.
I heard the shooting and I started screaming and I really thought I was the last one to be killed. I thought everybody down here was dead.
I tried to blast them point blank. I didn't care. Because I seen what they was trying to do. They was shooting not up, they was shooting discriminately straight at us. They was throwing the Elton, if you wouldn't have let that, you think like daddy and mama thing. And you was shooting.
The Hawkins have fought off 3 mass attacks. The first a few hours after the wounded gang member died, 2 more the next night. Since then, James Jr. has been shot at and his house firebombed. He'll take his turn guarding his father tonight, which will leave his home unprotected. The next morning, the home of James Hawkins Jr. still smolders from an attack that came while his wife and son slept.
It was just a nightmare, that's all. And I took my kids to my mom's house and I came back and stayed with the neighbor. I want to be as close as I can to this house. You know, they're the one who's totally everything. And this is it. This is just what happened.
Well, they don't know the challenge I'd like to give them, and if it come to that, I'm going to give them that soon. And the only thing they really do respect is the barrel of a gun. And superior firepower, I can recruit necessary, you know, to go in there and do that, but that'll be contrary to law and order.
Even the forces of law and order try to be careful entering Nickerson Gardens. It looks like a garden, but it has the crime rate of a ghetto terrorized by gangs who are out of control.
We're in Nickerson Gardens here. This is all bounty hunter territory. We spent a lot of time down here in great numbers. It's not a real good place for one unit to stop and do any chit-chatting. You generally need another unit to kind of back up against a wall and keep an eye on you so you don't get nailed. Well, I'm not going to drive too slow through here because we offer a pretty tempting target.
Even Treetops chooses his time to go into Nickerson Gardens.
See, if you're a street person, you know when to go in there and when not to go in there. If your vibes tell you to go, you go. If your vibes tell you to lay back, hey man, you got to be cool. Because you go off in there against your vibes and they shermed out, you dead.
When we wanted to talk to people in Nickerson Gardens, Treetops handed us off to another youth gang services worker, Gary Barner, who grew up here. He put out the word. Volunteers showed up to talk to us, their gang affiliations, if any, undefined. Mrs. Thomas is the mother of Antoine Thomas, Tony, the boy who was shot and wounded in the scuffle with James Jr. and later died.
From what I heard, that my son was shot for nothing. He was killed. And they're going to say that my son had a gun. Now, there are witnesses, which the news media didn't ask no one over here what happened. They have a lot of gangs, they call gang members, young men and young women in jail. They never came over here and asked them anything. They went straight to the Hawkins, asked them. This hurts them over here, because hear their side. Let them tell you what happened.
It's Hawkins and the gang member. It's not Hawkins and the gang member. It's Hawkins and the community, what it really is. But what the paper writes says the gang members, you know. But it's the community. Ain't none, all of us right here, you know. It's a lot like I work, he work, Lala's work, you know.
And they telling the story totally backwards. Like they a hero family, which is I don't blame them for trying to stop somebody from robbing somebody. But when you got somebody in the grasp already, you ain't got to blow them away right then and there. They had it.
But my son said he was shot for nothing. And my son don't lie to me, because I know my son. He loved a baby, and I know how he was. But my son was murdered. And every child that comes down Imperial right now is gonna get shot at random because someone over there is jittery. And that's not fair. And I didn't come here to cry, because it's not gonna bring my son back. And then they're gonna shot someone else.
Another boy was shot when James Jr. spotted a figure in the dark from his camper parked behind his father's house.
He was in a position to shoot in the house at a tall something, stick his hand close enough. He's close enough to the bars. There was some bars, security bars in the rear. He's close enough to jam something through the window. And I wasn't about to take any chances, but I did fire 2 warning shots, and he made a threatening gesture when he spun around rather than stand in the same position as I told him to, and I shot him in the hip.
Once again, James Jr. was taken into custody. This shooting was investigated by the district attorney's office, and he was released.
See, they trying to build it up like they're a big hero-like family, and we fighting this gang people, and they not gonna make us move. We don't want to make them move. All we want them to do is stop killing people, you know.
He have a license to kill.
Human exterminator.
This shooting about here is bringing about a situation as to whether I am trigger happy or whether the shooting is necessary. Should I just obeyed my father, deserted my father. I can't do that.
Mr. Hawkins was a police officer. He was an LA County sheriff, right? He was with the sheriff's department. So when they do something, it's considered he's still a police. In their eyes, he's still a police officer, see?
His father was once a special deputy for the sheriff's department, but James Jr. is not a policeman. James Jr. wears a uniform similar to a traffic policeman to help him direct traffic, his job in one of the Hawkins family's many businesses. From this tiny store, James Hawkins Sr. and his family have branched out into a network of businesses that have brought the family obvious success. James Sr. often sits here in his rolls, enjoying the place where he's built his businesses. This old building houses the store, video arcade, a barber shop. On a corner opposite Nickerson Gardens, Hawkins' son Otis runs a vegetable stand. Farmer Otis grows his own spinach and collards and sweet potatoes in surrounding fields. In another community, daughter Mattie owns a liquor store. She would like to see her father give up the store he loves and move away.
He could come with me. He has several children. We've all extended our homes to our parents. We would just love to have them with us. I would love it.
And Mattie has plenty of room.
And what kind of casket are you gonna use? Okay, fine. I got a problem. I got a case that a family wants a funeral service immediately. I mean, they want a rush service for Saturday.
Elton and James wear the uniforms required for escorting funerals, one of the services provided by the family business which does embalming for mortuaries. It is run by Eugene. By chance, he received the body of Antoine Thomas.
It was not a small caliber gun, it was a shotgun. It was at close range, and his upper shoulder was completely just torn away. So it was both barrels, evidently both barrels was discharged, had to be. And when they put on he died from massive hemorrhage. It was quite a bit of damage done to the boy. I'm surprised he was able to live as long as he did with arteries being shattered. I mean, he lost such a large amount of blood, because when we did the embalming, we didn't get any blood from him basically at all. I appreciate my father standing up for his belief, but I think it's very not right to do that. Very stupid, to be honest about it, because I know life is much more than a fight. You should run to fight again another day. Dead folks, it's not going to bother you. You know, I feel better with them than I feel with live folks, because I know I have nothing to fear. It's the live people that do the damage to you.
And a lot of time the kids come in the store hungry. Mr. August, I ain't got a thing. Would you give me, I feed them a lot of time. I just take pity and feed the little kids. I do it quite often. Or I see so much going on, it just makes you feel bad, it certainly do.
In Nickerson Gardens, a great many of the adults are mothers, poor, trying to raise their families without the help of fathers. Mrs. Willis is not on welfare as many others here are. She fears the influence of the gangs on her son, Louis Williams.
I did not want to move in here, but I didn't have a choice. See, and first of all, my cousin had my kids, and then they were in foster home. So they were going to send my children to my mother, and that was a no-no. I wouldn't put my children on my mother. I would not do that. So I got out of the hospital and come home for one purpose, and that was to raise my kids. I lost my home out in Compton on Magnolia, and all this traumatic everything, and trying to go to school and take care of 7 kids. You know, go to school in the daytime and college at night. I was doing it. I really was.
Mrs. Willis' son, Louis Williams, is now 17. He's been arrested twice before, and now he knows that the police are looking for him in connection with the Hawkins affair.
The gun just appeared. The newspaper printed it that the gun came from over in the projects, came from over here, and it ended up in a tussle with Hawkins' son and Tony, but it wasn't like that. He didn't have no gun, he didn't have no knife.
He was in there playing the game. When they shot him, they snatched him out the arcade and shot him right there.
A lot of holes in it. What it looked like, him walking across the middle of Imperial with a shotgun, running, going to an arcade to play the arcade. What that looked like, he walking across the street with a shotgun, you know, in broad daylight. Why would he let him in?
But see, when you speak of a shotgun, you're not speaking about a long shotgun, okay? You're speaking about a shotgun, all right? You're speaking about a shotgun that you can stick right here and pull out, you know, and shoot 2 times. You know, you're talking about a sawed-off.
You gotta put them away.
Well, we're trying.
Yeah, you gotta put them away.
And we got 24 names we're trying to put away.
Yeah, see, we got a list there.
The police and sheriff's anti-gang units make it their business to know the gangs and their members. Now they are setting out to round up the bounty hunters suspected of attacking the Hawkins.
Requesting a black and white coat.
Like I said, we know who the guy is, so we know who we're looking for.
You still want to come with us? Or?
Our man is right back there with a black jacket walking. Okay, hopefully he won't run because he thinks he's cool.
At 1575 requesting a black and white coat to on file.
A male Negro wearing a black jacket, a black hat, dark pants. Last name is Williams. He might not know he's wanted. He could have just split because he might have had a gun on him or had some dope on him or something.
199 13841 code 2.
We're on 52 Place. You got your light right on us right now.
You see, they got most of them. They got about 15, 20 of them in jail.
Right.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure off us.
Then I decided, well, I'm going to turn my son in. And I carried him out to the Linwood police, and I turned him in myself. And I proceeded to tell them that he's in good health, and if you jump on him or beat him up, I'm going to sue you.
Mrs. Willis has turned her son, Louis, into the county sheriff's. Special prosecutors of the district attorney's hardcore division are preparing a case against Louis Williams and other suspects based on conspiracy law. But before they can bring the charge against the 14 defendants in a trial, they must convince a judge in a pretrial hearing that they have reasonable evidence that a conspiracy existed. In charge of prosecuting these defendants, Assistant District Attorney Fred Horn. Mrs. Willis's son, Louis, is a juvenile, but he is being tried as an adult, and his greatest fear is that he will be locked up with adults.
He said, well, Mama, God answered my prayer. At least I'm not going to the jail, even though I'm going to another juvenile. He says, I'm not going down there to that jailhouse.
In undertaking to prosecute 14 defendants at once, Horn must face 14 defense attorneys. But behind Horn is the hardcore division and its approach to conspiracy law.
See, gang cases are very difficult. Gangs are group crimes. Very difficult to use the old one-on-one, the car theft type of stuff. And we have a common law history that groups are more dangerous to the community than the single person. Hence, we have conspiracy laws.
In other words, if only half of those 14 people had guns and fired at the house, the other half, or the other 7, are still going to be held accountable for it because they're part of the group, part of the conspiracy. They're all going to be off the street for, I think, a period of time. Some of them a long period of time. So they're going to get, I think, substantial prison terms, even the youthful offenders.
Go home for this and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Dear God.
This is a high-security courtroom with bulletproof glass and armed marshals. The pretrial hearing is a trial in itself. 3 weeks of witnesses and testimony to help the judge decide, is there enough evidence that a conspiracy to attack the Hawkins existed and that these defendants participated? Evidence enough to bind them over to trial. Early in the hearing, James Hawkins was asked a key question. Could he identify any of the defendants?
When you thought about testifying, you looked at these kids, you believe actually all these kids were there, although you can't identify them.
I can't identify.
Gang members are used to this, witnesses and victims not being able to identify them. But 2 witnesses are here who saw everything and are not intimidated. Hawkins' daughter Cynthia and his son Elton.
I was in the north window of the residence, on the garage of the resident there, and
Who else was with her?
Cynthia was there at the window. I had a pair of 1050 luminous field binoculars in my possession, and I was looking out of the across the street into the project area, and I observed suspect number 2.
All right, do you know this person?
Yes, I do.
Have you seen him before?
Yes, I have.
Somewhere in the neighborhood?
Yes, several times.
Out of that group, did you recognize any other people?
Yes, I did.
Who was that?
I recognized number 5. He was one of the guys that was with them.
Is that you, Mr. John Switzer?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
When I'm fired approximately 3 rounds off, I then
Did you see, let me ask you this, did you see a person firing your gun?
suspect number 1.
Okay. It's Mr. Horton?
Right. 2 bullet holes came through this window, hitting the inner wall inside the resident, in the bathroom there. Bullets ricocheted and landed in the bathtub. And the officer here is pointing to a bullet hole that hit the top of the store there.
Bullet holes in that also?
Bullet holes in that also.
So after you heard these 40-some shots Monday night, when you said you ducked down, you stay in the roof?
I came off the roof when I heard the shotgun blast.
Early on, the defense attorneys tried to discredit the Hawkins family testimony by attacking the credibility of James Jr.
How much of the barrel protruded beyond the end of your hand?
Well, I had my hand was around the muzzle and the beginning of the barrel. It was a very short gun,
So your hand wasn't over the opening in the barrel, was it?
But by no means was it over the muzzle, no sir.
Did your hand completely envelop the...
I was holding the barrel, with my knowledge. I remember holding the barrel.
Are you left-handed or right-handed?
I'm right-handed, sir.
Which hand did you hold the barrel with?
I remember holding it with my left hand, I believe, sir.
Your Honor, do you mind if I do a demonstration?
No, sir.
I don't mind. Okay, may I have Mr. Ray Newman assist me, Your Honor? Yes, sir. Thank you. Well, now, did he pull it? You said you had your hand on the barrel, didn't you?
Oh, yes, I did.
All right, why don't you use that newspaper as a barrel?
Okay, now, when I went to him, we started scrubbing my hand.
You grabbed his hand?
Yes, sir. Yes, we did.
Did he pull it out or you pull it out?
No, he pulled the gun out. I'm here scrubbing, trying to protect my life, buddy.
All right, now you've got your left hand on
sir.
his hand?
Yes, I do.
And your right hand is on the barrel?
On the barrel, it is, correct.
Okay, and you have the gun raised up to about his chin level?
By right here. We were scrubbing, you know.
Uh-huh.
And all the time,
Don't knock Ray over. He's not
yes,
this.
No, I realize it. We scrubbed, trying to take it away from him, you know. And I don't know if it's hand here, but apparently, you know, at one point he was trying to push off and right around him, that's when the gun went off, boom, you know.
You had a hold of the barrel with your right hand.
You remember testifying the fact that you had the left hand on the barrel of the gun?
Yes, I did. Yes,
and when you had the demonstration out here, you had your right hand on the barrel of the gun. Is that
Yes,
right?
sir.
Now, do you want to change your testimony, Mr. Hawkins?
I don't want to change it.
Which hand was it, Mr. Hawkins?
It was one of my hands on the
It was one of your hands, but you
Yes,
don't
sir.
know which one. Is that right?
Isn't it true that you then went to your motorhome and you got out a shotgun?
No, sir, I didn't.
And you brought that shotgun back to the arcade?
No, sir, I did not.
And you told those little kids, now run your mouth now?
I told him, no, sir.
You didn't tell them that?
Of course not. No, I ain't told him
Isn't
that.
it true that you grabbed that young kid, Mr. Thomas, and pulled him out of the arcade?
No, sir,
Put
I
a
didn't.
shotgun to his chest and put one bullet in his chest?
No, sir, I didn't. Is that? No, sir, I did not.
Isn't it true that you then ran away with the shotgun and during the 22-hour period you were hiding from the law, you got rid of the shotgun?
No, sir, that is not true.
Now, Mr. Hawkins, you seem to be quite an expert in arms, as you indicated. When somebody shot with a shotgun, which way do they go? Forward or backward?
Well, if someone is shot, I couldn't answer that, you know, because I'm not an expert on shooting people.
You've used a shotgun in a robbery before, haven't you?
I've never shot anyone, sir.
Never shot anyone?
No, sir.
Never shot anyone in a robbery. But there had been robberies by James Jr. with gun in hand.
Let's start off. You've had a conviction, a felony conviction for postal robbery, is that right? You've had a felony conviction for bank robbery. You've had a felony conviction for possession of a sawed-off shotgun. You've had a felony conviction for escape. Okay, now, what other felony convictions have you had?
All objections being unresponsive, Your Honor. That's important to record witnesses.
And so this mother knows a fear for her son that this father has known for his son many times.
I feel like that as a mother, that somewhere, somehow, I missed the mark just a little bit. I mean, you know, not that I'm saying that all it is my fault.
It is not all the fault of Mrs. Willis or of this city, because across the country more young gang members are doing violence to citizens without qualm. It seems to be a breakdown of humanity in the name of belonging to a gang. Belonging where other belongings, to communities, to church, families, have ceased to exist. But even belonging to a family with a strong father present did not keep James Jr. from joining in the violence around him.
My mother and father is very close in church, and we was raised up in church. And we was always taught to do the right thing. Yeah, we was always taught to do the right thing. Don't lie, tell the truth, and honest would always win. And that's the way that's the way I was brought. Raised up my 14 kids.
You can love him so much, to rather than bring what you intend to come out, you can almost smother that. You know what I'm saying? In other words, bringing out the good, sometimes you bring out the opposite. And then with him with his father and I not being together, he said to me, Mama, who do I look up to?
Louis's sister brings her daughter to see her Uncle Louis.
You belong to any gang?
Yeah.
What gang do you belong to?
Bonnie.
How long have you belonged to that gang?
8 years.
8 years? Do you know any of the defendants in this case? The individual seated over the jury box?
Yes.
Just tell the court which ones you know.
1, 2, 3, 4, 14.
Know them all? Tell us then names, or tell us the numbers of those that were present then on that night.
7, 6, 13.
Number 13 is Louis Williams.
I knew number 13?
Right.
Yeah.
How long did you say you knew it?
About 9, 10 years.
They're friends of yours?
Yes.
You're testifying against them, is that right?
I don't know what this is.
You're here testifying against them, are you not, Mr. Carr?
I guess so.
You're putting them in a position where they're going to have to bear some criminal responsibility, is that right?
I wouldn't know.
For a gang member to testify against fellow gang members is to risk violent retribution. The district attorney has offered to relocate this witness, Benny Carr, in a secret location. Louis finds out that the next witness is a deputy who is about to read from a statement Louis gave the sheriffs.
Okay, he saw Snoop, D-Boy, Renzi, Dale, T-Bone, Fluky, Birdman Greg, Bob.
Once before, Louis felt the anger of the gang after he gave information to the police.
After he told them about the guys that did it, he came in 1 or 2 times. He had cigarette burns on his back. And then another time I had to rush outside and they were caught trying to make him, suck their what's the name,
But Louis wasn't the only defendant to give a statement. So did Curtis Johnson.
Someone in the group said, nah, they've already killed 2 people already and nobody's done anything about it. Let's go over there and shoot up the whole family. Said Renzi had a shotgun, he had a .38, Bob had a .32 semi-auto, Wee Wee had a .25 semi-auto, Imp had a .22 caliber machine gun, Hilltop had a .30 rifle.
Malcolm Horton also gave a statement to the sheriffs.
You heard the machine gun go off, and then everybody started firing. He fired twice and then was shot in the buttocks by someone behind him.
So did Lorenzo Foreman, Bobby Brooks, Wallace Harris, Judge Mel Ricagna has heard descriptions of attacks on the Hawkins and efforts by the defense to suggest that James Jr. murdered Antoine Thomas. Now he orders cameras not to photograph a surprise witness for the defense, a passerby at the time of the shooting who does not know the Hawkins family. He claims he saw an older man shoot a younger man.
He had went into the back trailer and took out a shotgun.
Could you describe the shotgun before?
It seemed to be illegal, sawed off. When the younger guy pushed away, like trying to break away, the gentleman reversed the angle of the shotgun and cornered it like in a slanting position, and it pressed up against the chest.
What did you see then?
The gun went off.
Whether or not James Jr. shot Antoine Thomas is legally irrelevant to the charges in this hearing, that a group conspired to and did attack the Hawkins family. Prosecutor Horn presses forward with his arguments that a conspiracy did exist.
As far as the establishing of a conspiracy goes, Your Honor, each and every witness that counsel mentioned, contrast to what counsel says in the not establishing a conspiracy, does just the opposite. The conduct of all the parties involved is what establishes the conspiracy, as in any other conspiracy. Granted, you must have the intent to agree and the intent to do the act. The intent in this case, like in most any other cases, as the court is well aware, I'm sure, where the intent is proven by the conduct of the individual.
I don't agree with counsel. The fact that people are standing across the street from a house and shooting at it doesn't mean that anybody's agreed to do that.
Because a conspiracy is proven by conduct. When you have a group of people that get together, several of them with guns and several of them with bottles with rags out of them, with liquid inside, going across the street with a flare, it's clear that they aren't going over just to go trick-or-treating or something.
In the end, each of the 14 court-appointed attorneys for the defense tried to tell the court why his client should not be considered a member of a conspiracy. The attorney for Louis Williams is Victor Marin.
The only evidence that I heard that could even be argued to tie Mr. Williams into this was a statement that he gave to Deputy Castillo. Deputy Castillo testified that there was no arrest warrant for Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams turned himself in. In conclusion, I don't see that they presented enough evidence to tie Mr. Williams into the conspiracy.
And Louis said he didn't know where the gun's coming from. And then he said he did pick up a gun, but then he gave it back to one of the guys. But what they got him for was that he went on around there with him.
I believe this defendant in his statement also admitted to picking up a gun and starting across the street with the gun, not completing that, but handing the gun to somebody else was his own admission.
I think that the person who tells the other guy to shoot the gun or drives the car or sets the other person up is just as culpable. And so in years past, they may have just gone after the shooter, while we started prosecuting everybody in the gang and making them equally culpable.
The inference is that their intent is to do what? To do harm. That's clearly the evidence that's stated by some of these individuals. We're going to get the Hawkinses, we're going to shoot them, we're going to burn them.
Because each of those statements that were offered to the declarant only, and that evidence is not in...
Prosecutor Horn argued that the testimony of Benny Carr and the statements of the defendants themselves proved a conspiracy.
William Moore, Louis Williams, Terry McMurray, guilty thereof by order that...
The judge ruled that for 13 of the 14 defendants, all except Albert Thornton, enough evidence existed to bind them over for trial. Evidence that they did conspire and attack the Hawkins.
The offense of shooting at an inhabited dwelling, I believe, carries, I think it's also 16, 2 or 3 years, the range of time that the judge can give an individual in prison.
I made a factual finding that, in fact, based on the evidence presented, that in fact there was a conspiracy. And after I made that factual finding, then I stated as to count one, which is the conspiracy itself, I held everybody to answer except for one defendant. A conspiracy theory, I believe, is a tremendously powerful weapon of the prosecution. I think they should use it more.
Many of the major cities in the United States have a growing street gang problem. My recommendation to other jurisdictions is don't let it get this far. I think our experience should teach that we started doing it too late, that we should have taken this all-out war, a coordinated approach, if you will, on gangs much earlier, and we should start doing much more with parents and schools and other social institutions at a very early age to stop it in its tracks.
With the exception of our murder rate, which I'm a little distressed over because it's starting to creep back up, gang crime is still down over where it was last year at this time, which was down over the previous year. So we're still doing a good job.
A few weeks after the pretrial hearing, someone firebombed the Hawkins mortuary and burned more than 30 bodies.
They pulled out about 10 or 15 of them, just laid them all over the floor, like they meant to inform you that we mean to do damage to you. Not only did they steal everything, you know, that they put their hands on, why burn up dead bodies who are dead is stupidity. Police department informed that's a form of gangs to inform you that is to hate to do damage to you.
A few months later, there was another arrest. James Hawkins Jr. to face a pretrial hearing on the charge of having murdered Antoine Thomas.
They are not going to be satisfied until one of the Hawkins is pushing up daisies, because a bounty hunter is pushing daisies because of one of them. You know, they can outwait the police, and they are going to wait and wait and wait and wait.
To this father, the threat of a murder charge against his son outweighs the threat to himself by a gang. It probably always has. To this mother, the loss of her son to a gang is now outweighed by the fear of finally losing him to a prison.
Next week, we'll bring you part 2 of Shootout on Imperial Highway, continuing the story you've seen tonight, which was originally broadcast last year. In part 2, we go across the street from James Hawkins' store into the gang's turf to meet and listen to young men who call themselves the bounty hunters and to watch the criminal justice system round them up and hand down its judgments.
1 year later, Mr. Hawkins still watches and waits.
Well, we still here. Yeah, we still here.
But attention has turned to the other players in the drama. The question for the court, can anyone be convicted of attacking the Hawkins family? The question for the public, who are these people? Why do they join gangs?
Some of the most horrible examples I have seen in this county have been done by these 16 and 17-year-olds.
You know, we gotta survive. They don't give us no jobs out there. You know, ain't no jobs out there. Some person to tell you, well, this is how you make a living. You do this robbery, do robberies, or you can sell this dope.
It's a good excuse. Okay, it's a damn good excuse. It's a hell of a front.
There's a people that have a need to collectively get together. Now, when Wallace gets jumped on when he's 12 years old, what does the thing happen in his mind? Process, I need protection.
I'm afraid. Yeah, I'm afraid. Yeah, I'm afraid.
Next week on Frontline, part 2 of Shootout on Imperial Highway. I'm Judy Woodruff. Good night.